Hello, hello, good afternoon. It's Monica from Life is Art, and this is the Friday 3:30 p.m. demo at the Chocolate Tour of Belgium online crop. And although it's the Friday 3:30 p.m. demo, it's happening at 5 o'clock p.m. And that is because Mom had to do some chauffeuring duties for the college kid. And so that's just how it goes sometimes. So hopefully you all noticed that in the schedule that this afternoon's demo was going to be late, that it was going to be at 5 o'clock. So here we are, and we are going to be looking at the Sweet Memories card making workshop kit. Sweet Memories is the featured collection for the month of February. So you're going to see a lot of this collection over the next several weeks, a few weeks. And so this is Sweet Memories. It's a lovely collection. And we're going to be looking at the card making workshop kit. Now, if you've ever had one of our scrapbooking kits or card making workshop kits, they're a lovely tool to have. I find them very handy for going to in-person crops because you can just take a kit with you, bring along a couple things that you need to get it done, and no fuss, no muss. You just can just make a whole bunch of cards all in one day. Hey Deborah, nice to see you're watching, and Michelle is here too. If you're joining me live, just say hello or howdy so I know you're here, and if you're watching later on replay, you can just say replay. So when you purchase one of the card making workshop kits, you're going to get everything that you need, with the exception of a few optional things that you can do to create your cards. There's a few additional things like ink and stamp blocks and, those sorts of tools that you usually have on hand. So the kit will make 16 cards. 12 of them are regular size cards and are standard size cards, and 4 will be slimline. You get a stamp set with thin cuts, and this one has some really fun thin cuts. It has this one that cuts out a doily. It's got all the little things. It's got this swirl, a little butterfly, a couple different sentiment banners, and it's got the stamps, the thin cuts. Then you also get a pack of the silver glitter gems. You get all your cards and envelopes. You get the cardstock that you need, and you get a couple sheets of the Sweet Memories bulk paper. And what else? I think that's about it. And then there's just a few ink colors to add, an optional shimmer brush. You can use a round sponge to do a technique on this. So let's get started. We're going to work on project number 1. And in the kit, you also get printed full color instructions, which really helps when you're putting together a kit. So it shows you the cards that you're going to create. It shows you the list of the materials that you're going to need, like the kit. Then you're going to have mist, mink, mulberry, sage, inks, a ballerina shimmer brush if you want to use that, a round sponge, all-purpose mat, 3D foam tape, thin 3D foam tape, a machine to cut out the dies. That kind of makes it work a little better. Some acrylic blocks, your paper trimmer, your scissors, adhesive, and ruler. And then it shows you what the stamps and the thin cuts look like. Then you get into the cutting guide. And I like to kind of point out a few things in the cutting guide when we look at this. It gives you some information before you start. It also tells you on each of the pages where this little scissors are, that's where you're going to make your first cut. Anything that's a dashed line is a cut line, a dotted line is a fold line, and then they also have suggestions of how to arrange the thin cuts. It tells you how to cut the zip strips. Each piece of paper, it tells you the front and the back and what orientation they are in case something is being cut sideways. And all those wonderful good things for all the pattern paper and all the cardstock. And even all the cutouts, right? Now, there are quite a bit of things to die cut in this set. My mom was mentioning that because she was making oodles of these cards the other day. And it's very true. There are a lot of dies. So we're going to do project number 1, just to give you a feel of what is involved with putting together one of these cards. And I can't really see my video right now. I just want to see how much room I have on the side of my Versamat here to have my instructions. How far can I go and still have them visible? Okay, right about there. Right about to where the dot is. That's good. That gives me a guide to go by, because when I scroll down to see your comments, I can't see the video. Okay, so they start out showing you a picture of the completed card, and then they show you the card sort of faded out, but it has all the measurements of where to line everything up. And then it walks you through step by step the instructions. So the first thing we need to do is we need piece 1D, which is this piece of Mulberry cardstock. And we also need our Mulberry ink. So let's grab our Mulberry ink. And we're going to be doing a little bit of stamping on here, and we're going to stamp off the edge. So for today, I'm just going to use a piece of scrap paper to help me with that. And so let's open up our Mulberry ink. And the stamp that we're going to use for this is the big, large floral cluster from the stamp set. We're going to ink it up in the Mulberry. And I always find that Mulberry is really hard to see on here. So you just do your best. Get it inked up. And we're going to ink this on an angle, just like that, along the top corner first. Get that on there. And then we're going to ink it up again. And we're going to stamp across the bottom left corner, just like it is in the picture. We like working from pictures, right? I think scrapbookers and card makers are very visual people. Then, of course, we can wash off our stamp with our stamp chamois, like so. And then our next instruction, we're going to set that aside. Our next instruction, we can set this aside to dry, is to take the little doily that's been cut out of Mink, and it's been cut from the lighter side of Mink. This is the dark, this is the lighter side. And we need our Mink ink. We're doing a lot of tone-on-tone stamping in this collection, which looks really classic, I think. So we've got our Mink ink. That always sounds like a Dr. Seuss rhyme. Mink ink. And we've got this fun little swirly that's happening here. We're going to ink that up. Like so, and we're going to stamp it in the middle of our little doily like piece. There we go. We've got our Mink ink. Gonna wash that off. And then our next piece that we're going to bring in is the little white daisy one like this. Let's push this one aside. I'm going to move this out of the way because I find when I'm stamping on something little and white like this, I'm never going to line it up when I've got a piece of white paper on it. But having this nice black from the Versamat really helps. So it's cut out of white daisy. We're going to use Mist ink and Mulberry. Both of them are listed there. Mink and Mulberry. The tip is we're going to sponge the edges with Mulberry ink. And it says cut a wedge out of the round sponge and use it to apply the ink. So we've got our round sponge. It's about yay big. And you can usually cut it into about 6 little wedges. So this is my little Mulberry wedge. And it says for the technique, gently rub the sponge on the ink pad and then lightly rub the edges of the cardstock until the desired amount of color is achieved. So we're going to pick up some ink and then we're going to ink our edges. And I'm sure a lot of you have done some kind of edge inking in the past. I find it looks really pretty on this collection of paper. So that's done. We inked our edges. And then we need to stamp our sentiment with the Mist ink. And the sentiment that we're going to use is the just because. So we're going to ink that up in Mist. I'm going to pull this a little closer to myself so I can see what I'm doing. Hopefully I'm still on the screen. Stamp it in the center. Our nice little just because. We can wash that with our stamp chamois. Set it aside. And then it says to embellish with the ballerina shimmer brush once the ink is dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do that, and you're going to have to remind me. I'm going to add the ballerina shimmer brush after I've got it on my card, just because then it's stuck down and I don't have to worry about manhandling it. So there, we've got our nice little inking done around the edge and our stamped sentiments, setting that aside. The next thing we want, let's bring back in our scrap paper, is we're going to have this little die cut swirl. Isn't that such a pretty little swirl? That's one of the die cuts from the collection. This one right here, that nice swirl. And this would be super fun on just about any card or layout to add a little bit of extra embellishment. And I like that about a lot of these card making workshop kits, is that the embellishing sorts of dies that are in here translate really well into other projects. So we're going to bring back in our Mulberry ink, and we're going to sponge the cardstock with Mulberry ink. And for this, the technique is to gently rub the sponge on the ink pad and then lightly pounce it on the cardstock until the desired amount of color is achieved. And you think, well, if we wanted it to be mulberry, why didn't we just cut it out of mulberry cardstock? Which we could have, and that would be a thing. But this kind of gives a softer look, and it kind of gives it a lot of texture, and it kind of creates that sort of vintagey vibe that's going on in the collection. So we're just going to pick up the ink and then just pounce, 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 and that's why we've got our scratch paper there. And so now you can see we've gone from that white cardstock to a more mottled mulberry light coloration on there. So there we go. And then our last thing that we're going to need to do before we can start putting everything together is we need our mist ink again, and we need our little teeny tiny butterfly. I'm actually going to get rid of my scratch paper again, because otherwise I will never see that little butterfly. I've got my tiny little 1-inch block, my butterfly stamp on there. We're going to stamp it in mist. I'm going to bring it a little closer to myself so I can get it lined up. Hopefully. There we go. There's our cute little butterfly. Normally, when I have die, I stamp and then die cut. But I decided to follow the directions this time and have everything die cut ahead of time. Okay, and then it says embellish with the ballerina shimmer brush once the ink is dry. So again, we're going to do that later once we get it on the card. I'm going to set that aside. Now we move on to the assembly instructions. I'm just going to scooch this up a smidge. And it says prepare the pieces shown above. We've done that. Attach 1B and 1C to 1A. So this is 1A. Nice piece of mist cardstock. And B and C are a square that we cut on the diagonal. And so these two pieces are going to go in opposite corners, very much like how we stamped that mulberry piece of paper with the mulberry ink. And of course, you know me, triangles. Liquid glue comes out, just so we can get that glue right down into the points. And then we're going to line it up and stick it down onto that mist cardstock. Now, there are different things that you can do to kind of amplify the look if you really like that distressed, vintagey, shabby chic look. So something that you could do is I could take a sponge or a blending foam, and I could ink around the edges of this piece. Now, that's not in the instructions. That's just something that you could do if you wanted to. So I'm not going to do it today because that's not in the instructions, but I think it would look really cool if you were into that kind of thing. So we've attached 1B and 1C to 1A. Now we're going to stamp the border on 1A with mist ink. Tip, use 1B as a guide. So this is our 1B. So I'm going to turn this around, and we're going to get our little sentiment off of here. Just walking it off with my fingers. And let me grab the carrier sheet. We'll put that back on there. And then we're going to take this little border, and it's a short little border, but you can repeat it as many times as you want. So I'm just going to pick that up with my block, and I'm using a block that's a little bit bigger. I could use the little 1-inch block. This would totally fit on there, but I like to be able to see what I'm doing, and so if I had it on a 1-inch block, my fingers would be holding it in the way, and I wouldn't be able to see. So by putting on a larger block, yes, I have to be careful that I don't get ink on the block, but it allows me to see a little more clearly where I'm going without having my fingers in the way. So we're going to ink this up. We're going to make sure that we don't pick up too much extra ink. And then we're going to stamp right along the edge of that 1B. I'm going to scooch it just a little closer to me. And just check for ink. And you want to make sure that you get as close as possible to the pattern paper and as close as possible to the last stamp so that it looks fairly continuous. And I find when you're doing this, it almost helps to put the stamp where you think it should go and then move it a little bit closer. Because where I think it should go is always ends up leaving a little gap. But if you go where you think it should be and then nudge it a little closer, it always seems to work a little better that way. So we're just going to continue all the way along. There we go. And our last one. Lovely. I like this little border stamp. It kind of makes it look like you're adding a little bit of lace or something. Let me just show you that up close. I did get a little close to that pattern paper there for a while, but it kind of blends in. Okay. I find that makes it look a little bit luxurious or something, right? When you add that little bit of laciness to it. Okay, so now our next step is to attach prepared 1A with thin 3D foam tape. So here is our 1A, and sorry, no, this is our 1A, and we're going to attach it onto our card base with thin 3D foam tape. So let's just fold our card base in half. I'm going to just use my scissors here as a squuncher. Make sure we've got our opening going the way we want. Ask me how I know. that could be a problem. Then we've got our thin 3D foam tape, and thin foam tape is really good. It's half the thickness of regular foam tape. So if you've never compared, this is the regular 3D foam tape on the right, and that is the thin. So it's half the thickness of the regular. And so especially if you're thinking about putting things in the mail, then cutting down on thickness can be a real benefit, because sometimes they like to charge you more money when it gets a little too thick. And so we're just going to add some thin 3D foam tape to 1A, like so. We'll add a little bit in the center, and maybe a little tiny snippet in this larger gap on the sides, and that's good. Then we'll take all of our backings off. So again, I could ink around the edges of this. I'm not going to do that today, but I think I might actually do it on some of the cards. Once I get around to doing them, I'm going to a crop here in Brampton where I live in a couple weeks. A week or two, something like that. And so I'm probably going to take this card kit with me. All right, so let's center this on the front of our card, like so. And it's telling me it's 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and that's basically centering. And then let's bring in our next piece. We're going to attach prepared 1B with 3D foam tape. So this is the regular foam tape this time. So it's a good thing that they did the thin foam tape for that other piece, because 2 layers of thick stuff ends up getting kind of thick. And we're even going to add a little bit more foam tape. Right? So now if you don't like using so much foam tape, especially if you're going to put it in the mail, you can always leave off the foam tape on that first layer and then use the thin foam tape on this one, right? And that really cuts down on the thickness. Alrighty, and then we're going to attach this, and it says 1 1/8 inch from the top, 3/4 of an inch in from the side, but it's basically centered. So let's just center it on there like that. And then we want to attach the prepared accents as shown. So the next thing that's going on is our little doily that we stamped on. So let's add some adhesive on there, or liquid glue, but I'm just going to use this. There we go. And I'm going to use my tweezers because I find when I'm placing things, I like to have my hands out of the way so I can see where I'm going. I don't know, is anybody else like that, where you like to see where you're going with your stuff? So there's our doily in the center. Then the next thing we want to add is our little swirly that we added the ink to with our sponge. Now, normally I would tap this on my hand to get the glue on there, but I'm going to just add some glue to that main center stem, just the bottom part, because it's actually going to go off the edge here on this side. So you don't want to have too much glue on it because none of that's going to be touching anything. It's just floating in the air. And then let's bring in our sentiment, our just because, and I'm going to add a couple little pieces of foam tape to that. This is the thin one again, just because I don't want to add too much extra. We've already got a regular and a thin on there. There we go. And again, we'll do this. Now I got to remember that we've got some shimmer brush to add on here. So let's go ahead and stick this on our just because. And then our last one is this little butterfly. We'll add some foam tape to it as well. And again, we're going to put some shimmer trim on it. Or some, keep saying shimmer trim. Shimmer brush. Ballerina shimmer brush. So he's kind of sitting on the top of that swirl. So if you've never used a shimmer brush, this is what they are. This one is Ballerina. They do actually come now printed with the label, but when I bought this many moons ago, they didn't have the colors. The ring and the end show what color it is. And then you want to shake it up because this is shimmery, so it's got little bits of sparkly goodness in there, sparkle dust, and you want to shake it up to get it distributed. And then you're going to take it and just use it like you would a paintbrush. You're going to go ahead and just swoosh across that sentiment and then add some shimmer onto the butterfly. So pretty. Got nice and juicy. There we go. Handy tip. When these come, they have a yellow ring around the center. So you're going to take the cap off. You're going to, if I can get the cap off, you're going to unscrew this. You're going to pull the ring out, and then you're going to screw this back in, and you're going to hear it go pop. And that's how you know it's opened up the chamber inside. And then you always want to store your shimmer brush with the brush tip up. And that helps the liquid inside. There's kind of like two chambers. It lets the liquid flow back into the outside chamber. And then when you want to use it again, you shake it all up. If you left it sideways, some of the liquid would be in the inside chamber, which feeds the tip, and or the opposite. I can't remember which way it goes. But it wouldn't be all shimmery because all the shimmer would have settled down and it wouldn't get mixed up. So always store it this way so that it's always ready to get shaken and used. Okay, now our last thing we want to do is add our gems. It says embellish with gems. And so for this, you just either embellish to your heart's content, or you can look at the picture and see where the gems are. So on this particular one, there's only 2 gems that I can see. So we've got 2 different sizes, large and small. So we're going to take one of the small ones and we're going to tuck it right in there, just under the sentiment. And then we're going to take one of the large ones and we're going to put it right there on the side. Oops, shifted. Right there. I use my piercing tool for that because it makes it easier for me to pick them up and position them. And that is our completed project 1 from the Sweet Memories card making workshop kit. So we started out with our card base. We took that piece of mist cardstock and added our 2 pieces of pattern paper on top. Then we stamped that border all the way along. Now, of course, if you look at this, you can see that we only really needed to stamp a little bit here and a little bit there. So that's how to work smarter, not harder. And then, of course, we've got our Mulberry on there with our tone-on-tone Mulberry stamping in the corners. I like how everything is kind of focusing in towards that center with all those fun angles that are coming towards it. I also like that the border stamping is only on the one side. It kind of gives it that little offset look and makes it stand out a little bit more. And then, of course, we've got our little die-cut doily on there with some, again, tone-on-tone stamping in the Mink. Then our swirl that's been die-cut and sponged. We've got our sentiment that's been stamped and sponged. Our butterfly that's been stamped and shimmer brushed. And I don't know, because I can't see the video, whether the camera is picking up the little bit of shimmer from that shimmer brush. I'm seeing it in my eyes. And then, of course, our lovely glitter gems. I hope you enjoyed seeing how those card kits work, and I hope you feel inspired. Even if you don't have the kit, you can use this same layout to create a card of your own. And if you do, take a picture of it and pop it in the comments when I post it on the event or on the business page, because we'd love to see what you create. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your early evening, and we will see you at 7 o'clock for Chat and Craft. All right, toodaloo. Bye.